Greetings, gentlemen. We're coming at you with an epic video. Today I've finally gotten my hands on a certain vicious, trendy, and really good-looking yellow car. This is something you immediately lust after the minute you see it next to you in traffic. Give it up for the new Toyota Supra. So this thing costs $85,000, and it gets up to 62 miles an hour in a bit over 4 seconds. It might even be able to drive sideways. It's got some incredible styling, and I've heard that this car is pretty much completely lacking any Toyota DNA. Let's find out if that's true. Okay, if we were to examine the exterior, I honestly can't agree with those who don't see the difference from a Z4. To be honest, this thing doesn't even look like a series production vehicle. It's a freaking hypercar, seriously. I mean, when you're driving down the street in this thing, you look like you came straight out of a movie, possibly even from the Fast and the Furious. The front end does look kind of normal, I guess. But if you look at the side, the windows have got this insane rake to them. There's your first sign that something's up. You've got all of these arches and air ducts, which are pretty much all fake. Now I say we have a look at the three-quarter profile, which of course is what other motorists are going to be seeing when you drive by them. Now all of a sudden you're like, holy mother of... I mean, look at that shape. This is some insane rear-end styling. Straight out of an action movie, with its ducktail and all of these splitters. This LED array which contains the brake and reverse lights, just like you get on a high-end sports car. You've got these striking exhaust tips. So this is obviously the GR trim level, which is slightly dressed up compared to the stock version. And just look at these muscular hips. I think they can even give a 911 a run for its money. And here you are looking at this and thinking that you're some kind of superhero. Check out this aerodynamic groove in the roofline, which of course allows the car to cut through the air with even more efficiency. As for the front-end styling, I think it's a bit underwhelming, but that said, it is sort of reminiscent of an airplane. You've got this pointy nose like on an airplane, which is obviously meant to slice through the air. You've also got these fake air vents. This particular one doesn't go anywhere. As for the gap between the headlight and the fender, that one actually does something. God knows how that happened. And don't even get me started on all of these splitters. The license plate looks totally out of place. Anyway, what I do know for sure is that you can discuss the styling of this thing forever. So this Supra is definitely a potential cult classic for the younger generation. A poster car in a time when nobody hangs posters on their walls anymore. This is most certainly a kind of fashion statement, which you would lust after, and that urges you to tear ass. It gets a lot of attention, people keep taking pictures, and they might even be jealous, or so it may seem when you're sitting inside. As for the most important bit, well, that would be the engine, of course. The funny thing is that I saw this exact same picture back when we filmed the first Supra in Madrid, and they didn't let us film the engine bay for whatever reason. I really can't imagine why they'd forbid filming this. I mean, we still saw it just a bit later. What's the point of concealing the truth when later down the line everybody's gonna know it anyway? I mean, the truth they tried to hide will still become known as the truth. What the hell? So we've got a B58 B30, 340 horsepower. Yeah, this here is an inline 6 from BMW. If we remove the plastic cover, we'll see BMW logos all over the place. You can even find BMW logos on this Supra without getting into the engine bay. For example, right under the windshield where they print the VIN, you can see that it says BMW so that there are no illusions right from the start. I suggest we look at the situation from a different angle. We're all aware of a certain company called Toyota that generally knows what it's doing. However, that doesn't apply to engine building. When was the last time Toyota produced an efficient motor? I guess that would be the 2-liter 280 horsepower 3S GTE. After that, we got a 5.7-liter V8 with 360 horsepower, which wasn't particularly fast, and a lot of other engines with monstrous displacement, terrible fuel economy, and mediocre power, with maybe the exception of the Corolla's 1.6. I'm trying to say that they're in a tough spot right now. These are reliable and long-lasting engines, of course, but nowadays nobody's really looking to buy a car and keep it for 1,000,000 kilometers. Those who make it to that mark receive a new Toyota and keep on hammering, but those cases are extremely rare. Everybody else buys a car, drives it for a few years, and waits for the new model, which consumes less fuel and accelerates faster. That's not what Toyota's motors are made for. Their engines are either fuel efficient and slow, or thirsty and slow regardless. So there you go. When it comes to powertrain development, Toyota is sort of stuck in that time when everybody made real cars. Meaning that they're just not keeping up with the times, and that's why they've borrowed so much stuff from another automaker, which will allegedly fall apart after 60,000 miles, but it'll also make the car fast, while providing good handling and efficiency. As a matter of fact, this is the fastest car Toyota sells right now. This might even be the quickest car they ever made. I mean, did we ever get a Toyota that made it to 62 in 4 seconds and change? What matters is that this is going to be the only available engine option for this thing. The BMW it's based on will get a 2-liter, meaning that it'll be slow, but at the same time eye-catching and cheap. As for the Supra, this is what you get for your 85 grand. 340 horsepower, 4 and a bit seconds to 62, and no other options. No manual gearbox, no 2-liter engine. This is quite obviously an expensive toy with striking good looks, which you can't help but want to buy. What's most important is that nobody wants to spend $85,000 on a bare-bones racer. In our case, we're dealing with just a regular street car. Though in some regards, it really isn't that ordinary, is it? Allow me to explain. First off, this thing is very comfortable and well thought out. It has a high-resolution backup camera, no 360 system though, but perhaps you can get that as an option. They might have deemed our poor man's version unworthy of such luxury features. Though the GR is supposed to be an expensive trim level. Right, the trunk is open, and the car is letting us know. Now there's the matter of putting that information out there. I almost forgot to tell you that this thing comes with an automatic trunk lid. Yo guys, my trunk is open, can you get it for me? It's got a bunch of cool features. And now you're gonna witness... There he is. So a guy comes out, and this is all standard equipment, mind you. You tell me about your S-Class and its self-closed doors. Now that right there is a proper self-close function, which is never gonna let you down. And now we go for a drive. Did a wheel spin? That was quite a rush. But we got whooped by that 63 AMG because of the wheel spin. And that's all you need to know. We had some traction issues, and he's ready to whoop us again. Check this out. Let's try that again. Launch control didn't work that time. And it's over. That thing is a rocket ship. It didn't give us a second launch. That's all you need to know about its performance. 5.4 seconds, and that's without launch control. Seriously, it failed to do a launch. And that's in ideal dry weather conditions at 19 degrees Celsius. 5.4 with launch control. Some more wheel spin. 5 seconds flat. That's a bit better than last time. 5 flat. Looks like we're getting somewhere. And I clearly felt that it bogged a bit in the beginning. And that's on some sticky tires. In decent weather conditions. Let's call it 5 seconds. And if we were to install some R888s... Right, should have gone that way. Anyway, if we install some R888s, I'd say we can get it down to 4.5, 4.7. I think. But for now, we install the cheapest Chinese rubber we can find. And just have a good old time. Straight line performance is a bit lacking, but we will make it go sideways. Yeah. Okay, since we are seasoned drifters, and we're looking to achieve 10 out of 10, we've replaced the stock tires, which are $300 a piece, with something that costs a bit over $100. We will lose a bit of grip, but that's gonna allow me to slide on tarmac. Wouldn't want it to straighten itself out. It was actually Nikita who suggested we install some Chinese tires, but it's different from what you said we should use. Looks like they tried to fool you. Yeah, Sailor Moon, that's the one. Our camera crew loves anime, so that's all I can say about that. Anyway, now it's time for us to head out. Get our pants on nice and tight, go give the oversteer culture guys a visit, and show some 10 out of 10 level drifting. Okay, gentlemen, we actually got really lucky. We've made it to a test track, and as soon as we arrived, it started to rain. So we'll be driving on a wet surface, meaning that even a ham-fisted attempt should work okay. Right, engage sport mode, switch off the stability control, which by the way you can turn off completely. Meanwhile, the locking rear diff remains active. Let's have a go, shall we? Brake the wheels in first, initiate in second. Show me some steering lock. How did that look? Doesn't have enough steering lock. I was running circles around you on full lock, at a pretty modest angle. Okay, so this is more of a track-oriented car, and the factory tires don't really provide enough grip for that. Some sticky rubber would really go a long way in improving acceleration and road holding, though it isn't too bad even in stock form. But I mean, there's always room for improvement, and better tires is a good place to start. As for drifting, I reckon this thing would only work during the winter. I mean, why would you want to deal with the lack of steering angle? I really don't see the point. The M2 also had that problem, by the way. Okay, so now we know that this thing was made for the track. Okay, so people keep starting fights in the comments as soon as anybody drops a picture of a Supra or a BMW Z4. And I'm talking every picture that has anything to do with this item right here. And standing right next to it is a Gen 4 Supra, the legend itself, magnificent, fast, packing a turbo 2J and a manual transmission. This particular car has been fitted with a limited slip rear diff. Now this is what dreams are made of. Owning a car like this is everything you're ever gonna want from life. But let's take a closer look at what we've got here. It's supposedly an older car, but if we were to compare its specs to the new one, it's actually not that far off. If we were to install some quality tires onto a stock vehicle with no performance upgrades, it'd take 5.5 seconds to get to 62, or so the owner tells us, which I'll buy, given that it has a limited slip diff. You'll obviously need to know what you're doing to get a good launch, nail each and every gear change, but regardless, 5.5 seconds, given that they started making this car back in 1993, which is when this example was produced. Meanwhile, this one has launch control and a bunch of other modern goodies, such as direct injection, an electronic diff, traction control, and God knows what else. And all of that is good for just half a second. Granted, some good sticky tires might bring that time down to 4.5 seconds. Now, if we were to climb into the 4th gen car, we'd be greeted by a true performance-oriented interior. So before the cameras started rolling, we had a look. And the first thing I said was that they should have implanted this cabin into this car. And despite the fact that this one has been around for a very long time, The interior still looks amazing even by modern standards. It's got an awesome gauge cluster, a great gear shift, the handbrake is right next to your thigh, the center console is tilted towards the driver, and here you are thinking, what the hell am I supposed to do? On one hand, this car is better in every conceivable way. It goes faster, it's got more technology, and it costs 80 grand, which is quite a lot. On the other hand, you're looking at a true legend, which in many ways is the more likable car. I can see only one way to resolve this. So a person looking to buy a 4th gen would never get I mean the newer generation car. While those who can afford an $80,000 car, and I'm talking something new for that kind of money, well, chances are that they're not going to want to deal with some of the headaches associated with buying one, restoring and looking after it, considering how old it is. I've said this in my videos a bunch of times, but owning a car like this doesn't just involve buying one and driving it. It requires some effort, as in you have to keep an eye on everything. You really have to love this thing, feel it, look after it, and you'll be spending money not because the car is acting up, but because you yourself want to. This car, on the other hand, should save you some money on regular maintenance, which is due every 9,000 miles instead of 6. So in other words, all of those comparisons drawn in the comments between this Supra and this Supra are probably uncalled for. These are two completely different worlds. Some people want the hottest new thing which is exclusive and rare, a car they could use every day, that also goes fast. In a straight line, since we've learned that it's not the best option for drifting. Meanwhile, some people are willing to purchase a Supra and spend the equivalent of 2, 3, 4, or even more such Supras to personalize it, make it go fast, steer wide, get a two-way LSD and some engine mods happening, and turn it into the best thing ever. Over here we have a wild, exclusive new sports car for rich kids. And so where exactly is the evil in this equation? On this side or that side? In reality, the evil is in the minds of those arguing. I mean, these two cars are worlds apart, and we're actually very lucky to have both of them here today, since finding a 4th gen in St. Petersburg, and especially a 5th gen, is pretty much impossible. And that's all there is to it. Even if we get inside the engine bays and start speculating on how you could squeeze more power out of this one by installing a huge turbo, well, that's a waste of time right there. Nobody who's buying these will ever dabble in that. Meanwhile, this crowd will never be interested in a new new Supra. Yep, enough said. The old Supra is really out of this world. In my estimation, this car is a timeless classic that'll always be relevant. Despite the fact that the last 4th gen Supra that ever rolled off the production line is now 18 years old, and that these two cars are separated by a good 26 years, I'm equally as keen to drive the red car as I am this yellow one. To find out whether these cars can actually compete with one another, we're gonna have to conduct one last experiment. Right, so the 4th gen won that one. We could harp on the subject that these two cars were parked in a better spot, and that this is a top-level 2000 and whatever build, but I was driving behind that car, and I saw that people were always taking pictures of that highly modified 4th gen. Of course, when they'd see the yellow one, they'd photograph it as well, but the cherry red 4th gen would captivate some people to the point where they wouldn't even notice the yellow car. Perhaps if someone were to give the 5th gen that same sort of treatment, it would attract more paparazzi. When I'm rolling all by myself, I get my fair share of pictures. So believe me when I tell you that this Supra also works pretty well and attracts plenty of attention. But it has a hard time next to these benchmark 4th gens. Anyway, so after the photo session, the guys suggested we do the traditional supermarket run and buy something to eat, while trying not to drift under any circumstances. Though they did warn me that these white lines are slippery, and the tires might lose grip if you run over them. I'm no expert in this field, but I guess we should just see where this goes. So why would you need a car like this? Or this sort of driving, of course. To have some fun while moving in city traffic. That's what this car was made for. Originally, it was intended for track use. Designed to be a reliable weapon for track days. It's got a well-set-up suspension, no surprises there. Awesome handling and straight-line performance. From a stoplight, it gets up to 62 miles an hour in just 5 seconds on street tires. And if you were to install some sticky rubber, I reckon it'll happily do 4.5, 4.6 seconds. Though on these cheap Chinese tires, you'll see some disappointing results, like closer to 6 seconds, but whatever. As for track days, not everybody is prepared to drive to a racetrack and pay for admission. So for most people, it all comes down to enjoying themselves on the way home. That involves sport mode, deactivating stability control, and weaving through traffic. Everybody loves to weave through traffic. It's an essential part of our lives. And this is a car you'll really enjoy while weaving through traffic. They've done such a great job dialing in the suspension that you don't experience any sort of monstrous G-forces. In other words, it doesn't tear your head off when you're maneuvering. If you were to accelerate with the stability control switched off, which in my opinion is the only way to enjoy yourself while driving this thing. Anyway, you can always keep the car in check. Its driving characteristics are very predictable and transparent. It does tend to lose traction quite abruptly, but you always see it coming. And that's important. Oh wow, it has so much power that when you step on the gas and the car hits a crack or a pothole, you can feel the rear end take a hop on you. It's got a healthy amount of torque, and you really feel it on these tires. This car is constantly forcing you to countersteer. It's so much fun that you actually start to enjoy it after a while, and you don't see the point in keeping it together. I mean, this is such a rush. They've done the number on this thing. It's got short ratio steering, and you only need to move the wheel like this for it to start darting back and forth. Plus, you've got great feedback. So this car was obviously made for the racetrack. Without a single doubt, this thing was made for the track. As for its potential as a drift car, well, let me put it this way. Drifting is quite popular nowadays. Therefore, when creating this fashion statement, which is what I consider this car to be, you should definitely leave the stability control off in this thing. It constantly wants to get away from you. Anyway, it wouldn't have hurt to throw a bit of drifting into the mix. After all, the most sought-after versions of this car's predecessor are the ones equipped with manual transmissions. Now, those have 3 pedals and allow for some sideways action, and most of those cars are also rocking an LSD, which is pretty cool. This thing is all over the place in sport mode, but it all calms down as soon as you put it into comfort mode. Let's try setting off from a standstill. Oh, I am a huge fan. And I love how it handles when you weave through traffic, diving in and out, passing other cars, and there's a bad word I like to use, but kids keep asking their parents what it means, so I'm not gonna be dropping it today. But that's exactly what this car is perfectly suited for. Granted, this isn't very legal. I mean, there's no need to break the rules. Why not just take it easy, engage comfort mode, and drive at 40 miles an hour? Nah, it's just not the same. Now, this is much better. I'd even go so far as to say that, given its character and the amount of power the engine makes, the gearbox sort of feels like a compromise. If only it would slam into gear, for that extra bit of drama and excitement. Now that would be such a gnarly experience. By the way, about those previous takes, where I was saying something about weaving through traffic, you guys didn't see anything. I'm actually not a fan of violating traffic rules. I'm tired of this shit. In all of my recent reviews, it's always some sort of insane car that begs you to tear some ass. And that's not cool. Not cool. Therefore, despite everything I just said, you should take this car to a track day event. Have some fun. And you're not even gonna want to do any reckless driving in the city. Trust me, that would be the right thing to do. Alright, so on the inside, it's pretty much perfect, though it could use a bit of sound deadening. It's pretty much perfect for those who like weaving through traffic. All you need is a set of sticky tires. I'm aware that it's all a matter of taste, but personally, I think that the exterior styling is almost ideal, though I would prefer the car to be a bit wider. You know what, I think we're looking at the perfect platform for doing some sort of serious build. If we were to install a wide-body kit, give it some decent steering lock, and maybe even do a manual swap, while potentially preserving the stock BMW engine. I mean, it's worth a try. After all, the limited slip diff in the back works perfectly. Steering lock, of course, involves widening the track, since the frame rails are sitting right up against the front wheels. Even if you grind the arms down, the wheel is just going to lodge itself right into the frame rail. They've built up a few cars like this in Japan, so that's already common knowledge at this point. Anyway, you're looking at installing either a Wisefab suspension or a set of huge spacers, while widening the body, throw in a manual transmission, and the first person to do all of that to a street car might even get away with it. You can always tell the cops that this is an edition 1, with only 3 cars sold in all of Russia, one of them being in Siberia, and the cops might actually buy it. I mean, this car is so rare that nobody really knows what each version is supposed to look like. I'm actually pretty confident that if you get pulled over in a car with a wide-body kit, they might not even recognize that it's not stock. Even in factory trim, this car looks pretty futuristic. It genuinely looks like it came straight out of a video game. For example, this right here, is it stock? And how would a cop be able to tell anyway? And what if you were to just slightly augment it? Bear in mind that they've only brought about like 19 cars into Russia. Or maybe 22, it's some small number. Whatever the case may be, it's very unlikely that you'll ever see a Supra on the road. And the first 5 to 10 people to do a serious build would strike such a gold mine that even the foreigners would start to pay attention. And that's what distinguishes this car from a BMW Z4. You can say all you want, Yes, the BMW might be a bit cheaper, plus there's a lot of stuff going on, in terms of common parts and whatever. Of course they're made in the same factory, and BMW manufactures this car for Toyota, and the only thing that Toyota brought to the table is basically them logging onto BMW's online configurator, adding a certain amount of copies to their cart, and placing an order. I wonder if they pay by card, if they add the CCV code at the end, or maybe that's not the way they do it in Europe. Anyway, that's all the input they get from Toyota. On the other hand, if they didn't make such an exterior, we would have never found out that such nice-looking cars exist, shared platform aside. Now, if I were to ever face a choice between a new Supra and a BMW Z4, yes, I know that it's all a matter of personal preference. I mean, I'm not trying to give any consumer advice or anything like that, and I will concede that I might be wrong. But I don't care. I'd choose this one. I mean, you can either get a Z4, which of course is unique in its own right, but it's still very much a BMW in terms of design. Or you can get yourself something completely extraordinary. And that's the main advantage of the new Supra. Toyota's never gonna give us another car, but I'm gonna say this anyway. This right here is the perfect BMW Z4. That's just how it is. I'm totally cool with Toyota never letting me review another one of their cars. But in my opinion, this is the best thing Toyota has done in a long time. Toyota has created the ideal BMW Z4. A lot of people are going to disagree with me, but I'm sticking to my guns. After driving this car for a full week, and even buying a pair of matching yellow sneakers, I'd like to keep it. But it just won't work for me, given that I live in the countryside. But that's just me. As for everybody else, this car will definitely work. It's a great car, and it's a Toyota Supra. This is a Toyota Supra, I insist. It's really all down to the styling. And that's that. Big thanks for watching this video. Good luck to all of you. It's been a while since we've done a car so seemingly ordinary, but at the same time so extraordinary. See ya! Translation and voiceover by BMI Russian.